In this episode of Home Theater Geeks, I answer a question from Jimmy, who just bought a house that was pre-wired for speakers. So stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This show is brought to you by members like you. Thanks.
Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek. In this episode, I answer a question from listener Jimmy, who just bought a house. Well, recently. Here's his question. I've been listening to TWiT shows for a few years and enjoy them all. Thanks. Glad you are. When I bought my current house in 2015, I noticed the living room is wired for 5 speakers, 4 on the wall close to the ceiling at about 10 feet, and the center channel. He sent a photo, which we'll show you in a minute. My living room is about 15 by 15 with 11 to 12 foot ceilings, and it's wired for surround sound. There are 4 pairs of wires and a center in the walls. I guess these wires are connected to the coax, is it? Connectors near the TV wall plate. So it got me thinking to get an AV receiver and set up a 5.1 home theater system. Good idea. Best Buy price matched an Onkyo TX NR 6100 AV receiver for $599, so I got it. I wanted to test it, so I tried to set up the new soundbar that I got, which is a Sony HT-S400 with the Onkyo, but no sound. Soundbar probably is not designed to work with a receiver. It is overwhelming to decide what speakers to get for a 5.1 home theater. My budget is $1,000 to $2,000 for speakers. Any suggestions? Best Buy has Klipsch, but do they mount on the wall? I really don't want floor-standing big speakers. I heard you in the past talk about ELAC and Edifier. I'd appreciate it if you can point me in the right direction or have any suggestions. Well, yes, I do have some suggestions, Jimmy. And you're right, the soundbar is not designed to work with the AV receiver. There are no really good ways to do that, primarily because the soundbar has its own amplification. It's meant to get a signal in from HDMI and play the sound that way. So that wasn't going to work. That wall plate, though, that's pretty interesting. That's kind of nice. We have the photo that you sent, and here you can see 5 pairs of connectors for the left front, right front, center, left rear, I guess it says. I'm not sure, and right rear. Those are not coax connectors, though. You were right to question that. They are actually meant for banana plugs. They might also be binding posts. If you can unscrew those outer rings, then you might have binding posts there too. But the centerpiece is a banana plug. And that is a really good way to connect speakers. So that was very thoughtful of the previous homeowner to make the speaker the speaker connections there on that wall plate the way they are. You could also connect a subwoofer for 5.1. But that's not in that wall plate. That would be a connection directly from the AV receiver to the subwoofer, not through the walls. No big deal, in my opinion. Now, the wall plates for the speakers that have the speaker wire protruding are certainly appropriate for speakers. There you can see one of them in Jimmy's house. It's a little difficult to know which conductor is which with respect to the connectors on the other end. You have to maintain a consistent polarity. Speakers have 2 connectors on the back, typically labeled plus and minus. Now, those wires coming out of the wall, there are 2 conductors in the cable. One of them is insulated with a red material and one of them is insulated with a black material. So you're going to have to go back to that wall plate near the TV or near the receiver and determine which of those 2 connectors for the left front and the two connectors for the right front and the center and the two rear speakers, which one's connected to the red wire and which one's connected to the black wire. You can probably do that by taking off that wall plate. Maybe. I don't know for sure. But you do need to do that because you want to maintain consistent polarity. That is, making sure that the plus on the speaker is connected to the plus output of the AV receiver and the minus to the minus. Typically, it would be the red wire to the plus and the black wire to the minus, but it has to be consistent whichever way you go. Also, I have to say, having your front left and right speakers high up on the wall, 10 feet up, as you say, not ideal. I'm sorry to say that is not ideal. But it is what you have. So, I guess make the best of it. Now, Klipsch is sold at Best Buy and that they're very fine speakers, but I was unable to find any that are wall mountable. They do have some in-wall speakers, which are meant to be mounted in the wall. So you have to cut a hole for them in the drywall between the studs to mount them that way. And you probably don't want to do that. You're asking about on walls in particular. ELAC, you also mentioned, does make a couple of on-wall models. Edifier does not. I must admit, I'm not necessarily a big fan of Edifier speakers. I've enjoyed their headphones, but I don't know much about their speakers. ELAC makes really good speakers and reasonably priced in general. So I do recommend those, but they only have a couple of on-walls, which I'm going to tell you about here. But not many companies do. They just don't make on-walls. They make in-walls, otherwise known as architectural speakers. But again, you have to cut a hole in the drywall, the size of the speaker roughly, and insert them in there. So like I said, ELAC makes a couple of on-walls. They make the Debut 2.0, OW 4.2, DOW 42. That's a mouthful for sure. They're $330 each. ELAC also makes a higher end one called the Muro OW V41S. Those are $400 a piece. I would recommend the Muro of these two because it is a symmetrical design. It can be mounted horizontally or vertically. And you might want to do your front left and right and rear left and right vertically, but you'd probably want the center horizontal. The Debut cannot easily be mounted horizontally, so that would be less advantageous. So 5 of the less expensive ones, the Debut 2.0 DOW42, would be $1,650, while 5 of the Muros would be $2,000. That would max out your budget, with leaving no room at all for a subwoofer. I also found another, what I think is probably at least as good, if not better. I'm a big fan of Golden Ear, the speaker company called Golden Ear. They make a speaker called the Super Sat 3, which is $350 each. I would get 4 of the Super Sat 3s for the front left and right and rear left and right, and 1 Super Sat C, the C standing for center channel. And it is mounted horizontally. And those 5 speakers would cost you $1,750. So then you need a sub. And unfortunately, getting a good one for $250 or $350, not easy. The Golden Ear Force Field 3 is their least expensive subwoofer, goes for $649. And so that stretches your budget a bit, no doubt. But it's worth it, I'm sure. I really like Golden Ear products. It has an 8-inch driver, which is very small for a subwoofer, but it claims to go down to 27 hertz. with 500 watts of continuous power built in. I also looked at SVS. They make a wide variety of subwoofers and speakers. No on-walls that I could see, but their least expensive sub is the SB1000 Pro, which is $600. Again, over your budget, but it's a 12-inch driver, and it goes down to 20 hertz. That's the bottom of the human hearing range, and that's really what you want a sub to do, with 325 watts of continuous power. Now, the least expensive subwoofer I could find, that I could find with the amount of time I spent on it, was the ELAC Debut S10.2, which would match very well the ELAC speakers that I mentioned before. It's a 10-inch driver, costs $330, has 100 watts of power, of continuous power, and it goes down only to 35 hertz. So it's pretty wimpy compared to the others that I mentioned. But it would stay closer to your budget. If it was me, I'd stretch the budget and go for the SVS or the Golden Ear. And I would certainly recommend getting the Golden Ear Supersat 3s. I think those would just sound awesome. So that's what I recommend. I hope you can stretch your budget a little bit. If not, the ELAC subwoofer will do. And you could always replace it later when you get a little more cash. So there you go, Jimmy. Hope it helps. And we thank you for sending in this question, and we encourage all of our listeners to send in their AV questions to htg@twit.tv, and we will answer as many as we can on the show. And as always, we thank you for your support of TWiT with your membership in Club TWiT. And with that, you can come into the Discord channel anytime and watch us make the show live. And we do hope to see you then. Until next time, geek out.